The reason why this video is important to me is because I don't think people really understand the power that their words hold. Like, when you speak to another person, your words have the ability to completely change the course of somebody's life, right? Let's say you meet someone on the street, have a quick conversation with them. That conversation can be enough to inspire them to make a change in their life. But on that same note, your words also have the ability to completely wreck their lives. I know there are some people who probably don't believe that words can really do that, or that you can give somebody that type of power and ability, but you have to look at the fact that you don't know someone's past. You don't know where they come from. And so that childhood, all of that impacts how that person, how they process information, how they decide what to do and what not to do consciously and subconsciously. And then also, you have to remember the biblical applications of it as well. And so there are so many different layers and facets that I'm going to dive into to help all of us get just a better grasp and understanding that you got to be careful what you say to somebody. As I already mentioned, words can impact someone's life, right? Words have the ability to shape another person. It doesn't matter what stage of life that they're in, but it is even more important for children, babies, toddlers, preteens. Essentially, if you are under the age of 25, what you say to this person is going to essentially be the foundation that their life sits on. And the more repetitive a certain phrase can be, especially the intention and tone behind it, that has more impact typically than saying something just once. You may be thinking, I just told this person this one thing. What you don't know is maybe they've been hearing that exact same thing or something very similar, like you're never going to be anything, you're never going to amount to anything, you're never going to make it, things along that line. You don't know how many other people they've been hearing this from. And so when all of it adds up, it makes a very big impression on how they start to think about themselves. Y'all know the old saying, right? Sticks and stones break your bones, but words will never hurt you. That is the biggest load of bull I have ever heard in my life. Sticks and stones will break your bones, and words can cause everlasting damage. What you say to a person, positive, negative, or neutral, does impact how a person sees the world, how they see themselves, how they see other people. And so you have to really be conscious of what you're saying. It doesn't matter how high you are. It doesn't matter if you're angry, if you're drunk, if that person may truly deserve what you're saying. You have to be cognizant and intentional about what words you choose to say to a person or not to say to them, because you are going to be held accountable when you die. Whether you believe in God or not, it's still the truth that you're going somewhere. And what you did on this earth, the impact that you had, all of that is relevant. And then also on your conscience. Do you know how many people who have done messed up things, if you go back to their childhood, typically the root of what caused the issues that led them to commit these heinous acts is someone who verbally abused them, physically abused them, emotionally abused them, or on the flip side, neglected them. And that can be just as damaging, you not speaking anything positive into someone's life. Let me spend a little time addressing the naysayers. Y'all know who you are. Typically, the Gen X baby boomer age, sometimes before that as well. I'm gonna talk to y'all for a little bit. You can have 5 people who go through the exact same situation, down to the T, right? And regardless of the similarities that they share in their experience of X imaginary situation, more than likely each one of them is going to have a very different response in what they take away from what happened, how they remember what happened, and how it impacts their lives moving forward. The reason why that this occurs is because each one of them, no matter how many similarities they may share amongst each other, like if they're siblings, for example, or best friends, it doesn't matter. The reason why all of their experiences, the impact, and so on, the reason why it's going to be so drastically different, potentially, not always, is because they're different people. The way they are hardwired to think and process information, to process negativity, positivity, and just life around them is not going to look the same. And that right there has a very significant impact on how they remember things. It's significant also in how it affects their lives, how it impacts their future decisions, what they choose to do or not do, and so on. You can have multiple siblings who were raised in poverty and an abusive family, verbally abusive, physically abusive. Every single one of them is going to have a very different takeaway from that. You're going to have some siblings who are going to focus more on the trauma, the negativity that occurred as far as their memories go. And all they have is the negativity. And the positive things that did happen, it gets clouded by that. You have some who are more optimistic, and they're going to focus on the positive things. They remember the negative, they're not stupid. But because they are built to be optimistic, because of the strength, the internal strength that they were built with, that impacted them taking away a more positive outlook, focusing on being grateful, looking at the positive side of things, the glass half full. And then you have some people where maybe you started off like the latter. Maybe you were an optimistic person, but maybe the situations that happened were so severe to you that it ended up changing the course of how you view the world. Now you're extremely negative. You're extremely pessimistic. You don't really look forward to things. You're always looking at what could go wrong. How do I need to prepare myself, embrace myself for what could happen, because you've been disappointed and hurt in such a way where now you go into life with that view. It has changed the vision, the lens, the filter in which you see the world. And that's true for everybody. Again, no two people have the exact same experience in everything. And this is why you cannot judge your strengths based on someone else's weakness. So quit trying to say, well, back in my day, or we didn't do this. No, let's not be against each other. Because you have to remember, my generation and the generations under me are your children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. And so there is a connection between us all. And so not to say that any generation is perfect, and also not to say that any one generation is just completely at fault. Because at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own individual actions. Point blank, period. But that does not negate the fact that what is done in a person's childhood does have a significant influence on how a person turns out. And that is the only thing I am trying to address right now. And that boils back to the power of your words. You have some people who use phoenixes as an example. Y'all know the mythological bird. If it is killed, it comes back stronger, right? It is gorgeous, beautiful, fiery feathers, and it is rejuvenated with life and with strength. I'm kind of dumbing the story down because I'm not trying to go into all of that. But I know some people who use those outliers, right? The Bill Gates of the world, the Sam Waltons of the world as examples of, well, why don't you just do what this person did? Honey, I'm not like them. They're built different. They're not the same as me. Yeah, they may have gone through worse than I did. They may have gone through worse than such and such person did, but it does not matter, because what you're doing is, when you make those type of comparisons, what you're indirectly saying to me, and when I say indirectly, what I mean is, this is not what you mean, but this is how it makes the listener feel, that my feelings, my experience in life does not matter, because it was not serious enough to you, and it was not traumatic enough to you. And so therefore, in your mind, I have no reason to cry. I have no reason to be butthurt, to feel sad, to feel depressed, to feel whatever it is that I'm feeling, to think whatever it is that I'm thinking. And that is not okay. What that does to a person is, especially a child who is too young to know how to handle the emotions that they're feeling, what it does is it tells them that don't tell anybody how you feel, because nobody cares. Nobody listens. Nobody understands what you're feeling. What you're going through is not serious enough because there's a kid in Africa or wherever who is starving. And so you have no right to complain, air quote complain, to feel sad, to feel anything other than grateful, happy, or neutral. And that's not okay. I had somebody when I was a kid, at a young age, I was going through a lot. And as an adult, I know now that I am hyper emotional. But as a kid, I was not taught how to handle and process my emotions. And with the stuff that I had going on, I told a family member, hey, I think I feel depressed. And I remember that their response was, no, you're not. You're too young. And essentially, I'm paraphrasing,
I know what it is, because I guess in their mind, I'm an adult and you're a kid.
So you're not going through anything serious enough to evoke depression to even happen. But that wasn't the case. And what it taught me was I can't trust anybody with my feelings. They're not going to understand. Everybody is going to take those situations differently. But you're teaching someone, you're teaching especially a child, that their emotions are not reliable and that their life experiences are not valid, they're not valuable, they're not worth anything. And I'm pretty sure for you to have that type of response, that was also done to you. And that's not okay. We can't keep using how we were brought up as an excuse for our bad behavior and for not doing right moving forward. We can't make up for what's been done, but we can do better in the future. There's a whole new generation of kids who need to have that emotional coaching, that need emotional intelligence that we're all, my generation down, is lacking if we want to have a chance at having a healthier world. Not a guarantee, just a chance. I'm gonna tell y'all a quick story. As a kid, I was bullied. I was not beaten up, nothing like that, but it was like verbal, emotional bullying. I was a fat kid. You know, I was overweight. I wore very large size clothes. And in the school that I went to, yes, there were other bigger girls, but we were kind of like the minority in my grade group. And the words that they spoke, it shaped and reframed how I saw myself. The reason why this was so prevalent is you have to look at the fact that a kid, their world is school. You have 24 hours in a day. You're at school for 8. You go to sleep for hopefully 8. And so that leaves you the rest of that time period to do whatever. A big chunk of your world, of your environment, nature versus nurture, is with these kids. And if that's what you're hearing on a consistent basis, then yeah, it's going to change what you think of yourself. And in addition to that, if your home life is not positively affirming you to enough of a degree, if at all, to counterbalance that, then it makes the negativity stick just that much more. For me, my parents loved me and they're great parents, but I did not have enough positive affirmation to either cancel out or override the negative words that I was hearing that were sinking into my soul. And then in addition to all of that, I was not taught how to handle my emotions. I did not know or think as a kid, let me go tell my mom what's happening. I didn't know what to do with them, right? I just held on to them and they kept building up and just kept getting bigger until now I'm an adult. And whatever you don't deal with, it doesn't disappear. No matter how successful you become, no matter who you marry, no matter what achievements you make in life or anything that you do in life, those things that happen to you, good or bad, they will never go away. And sometimes, depending on what it is and the doors that it opens, it actually can become worse. And so as an adult, I now have to play cleanup with all of the things that were done to me and spoken over me as a kid. but we're all human. Let's take the whole generational thing out of the equation because that only causes division amongst us. As a kid, when you grow up, unless you have a very specific type of neurodivergency, you're gonna have emotions. When you're born into this world, you come into the world having emotions. Happiness, sadness, joy, fear, anger, the list goes on. As a kid growing up, how you internalize the words that you hear, the experiences that you're immersed in, and the environment that you're also immersed in, all of that is subjective. It is based upon the individual and how they were created. And again, as I mentioned before, no matter how similar you are, no matter what shared experiences that you have, personality traits, everyone has varying degrees of how they view the world. It's a different filter. Even if it's just like a 2% difference, it's still different, and that heavily impacts your perspective and your experiences of life. That being said, as a kid, if your emotions are ignored, being out of you, made fun of, then this is going to affect how your brain starts to develop and processes future experiences, how it processes life. And this can empower some people. There are some people where they take the negative things that happen to them, and in spite of how bad it is, they're able to rise above it. You have some people that they try to rise above it, but life continues to beat them down in such a way where they get buried under all the rubble and they just need a hand to help get them out. You have some people where they completely crumble under it and they never make it back out. And that doesn't make them weak, that just makes them different. That doesn't make you strong per se, it makes you different. And embracing these differences is going to help us as a society to have a better world. And when it comes to our kids, making sure that you are intentional and careful in how you speak to a child, especially paying attention to and noting those individual differences, is going to make a powerful and hopefully positive impact on their lives than what was done for us when we were growing up. Because if you do not teach a child that their emotions are normal and how to process said emotions, and if something bad is to happen, how to handle it, what's going to happen is you're going to get emotionally stunted, emotionally ignorant, and sometimes messed up adults. And what the result of that is, these adults, they begin to cope or they start to mask. And I'll go into more details about coping and masking in other videos, but I'm gonna focus more on coping. So coping can come in a lot of different forms. But just briefly, coping is any activity that you engage in where you're trying to use said activity to distract yourself from whatever negative emotions are occurring and playing out in your mind. This can be anything, and I'll detail that in a minute. Masking, on the other hand, masking is where you essentially take on another persona or a mask, if you will, in order to adapt to whatever environment that you're in. You're doing this for protective reasons because your brain has told you that, hey, for whatever reason, I don't feel safe. I need to try to blend in, and this may be a false version of yourself or even a version of yourself that does not exist in order to fit in and keep from getting hurt, whether it's physically hurt, verbally hurt, or emotionally hurt. I'm gonna give it to past generations. Y'all tough, like the stuff that I know a lot of people went through, and the Gen X baby boomer period, like it brought out a strength that I haven't seen in a really long time. I'm 30 now, and yes, my generation has some toughness, you know, throughout, but like generationally, we can't touch y'all with that. On the flip side, I would say our generation is more emotionally intelligent. We watched the things that y'all went through. We learned from your stories of your childhood, the things that we witnessed growing up in our homes, and we decided, hey, we don't want to go down the same path of ignoring our emotions and denying that part of ourselves because it is part of us as humans. And there are strengths and beauties in each and every generation, and I do want to highlight that. There are different ways to know if you or someone else has not healed from the trauma they have endured. One of the easiest tells is coping itself. Other more subtle, if you will, forms are, as I mentioned earlier, people who are excessively bragging, excessively cocky, almost as if they have something to prove. People who they're stuck in their glory days. They can't seem to be very present. Different things are happening in the world, but yet all they seem to focus on is what happened when they were younger and how good it was. And you don't have to be an old person to have that mindset. Y'all, there are so many different types of coping mechanisms. Drinking, smoking, gambling, workaholics, shopaholics, people who avoid physical affection of any kind, people who have an inability to express emotions, excessive eating, watching TV, listening to music. The list goes on. Not all coping is bad. I do want to point that out. Sometimes coping is needed. It can provide a very needed distraction for you, especially if you're so inundated or so flooded with whatever emotion you're experiencing, stress, anger, sadness, grief, and you just need that reprieve. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Where it can become dangerous is, one, there are some coping mechanisms you honestly just should never engage in, period, because it can lead to addiction, especially if that's something that runs in your family. It can open up spiritual doors, and then some things you just don't need to be involved with anyway. It can be something as simple as watching TV. I am guilty of this. You start binge watching something, and the next thing you know, 5 hours have gone by and somehow you don't know what happened. And you're watching show after show after show, and you're letting each episode go through, and your day is gone. Some forms of coping that should not be engaged in for a long period of time. One perfect example of that is a person who likes to shop, or shopaholics, whatever you want to call it. The reason why you don't want to engage in this for a long period of time is typically, like, some people will just create a wish list. They'll add things to their cart, or the wish list specifically that they would like to buy. It's kind of like almost like a vision board. It's things that you're dreaming about buying. Where the problem comes in is when you take it a step further. If you are actually buying the items and this starts to become a habit, that's where it gets dangerous, because whether you're shopping or you're doing anything else, drinking, whatever, what's gonna happen is your brain starts to register this form of coping as a stress relief for you. So the next time that your body, your physical body and your brain encounter another scenario that is at the same stress level as what you just went through, or maybe it's even worse than what you went through the first time, your brain automatically goes back to, I need to shop. Sometimes it becomes so second nature, so subconscious that you don't even know it, because your body is going to do, your brain is going to do whatever it has to get you as, I guess, regulated as it can. And it may not be the best thing. Your body and your brain does that when it comes to emotional situations to protect you. Your brain and your body will try to conjure something up to help you get back in the green, to make sure that you're good and that you're okay. Even though the activity or the thought that is coming to your mind may actually not be good, it may not be healthy or helpful, whether it's short term or long term. And this is why coping can become dangerous. When you get to a place where you start to rely on something to help you feel better, to help you just get through the day, to help you to get by, that's a dangerous game, because then you start retreating from life. You start to become a shell of who you were. And that's what we need to stop from happening. You retreat from yourself, and that activity that you engage in, it starts to becoming more realistic to you. Because let's be honest, emotions are a part of life. Positive and negative emotions are natural. You are human and made to have emotions, to feel it, to process it. And no matter how bad it is, I'm sorry, that is just part of life. And so when you start to drown yourself in something to help you get through it, to get through the pain, to numb it, to get by, and again, that can be anything. Emotional intelligence, emotional regulation, and making sure we're as healthily functioning as possible. And the root of all of that is making sure you teach your kids how to process their emotions. Why I'm mentioning all of these different ways to cope again is because in order for you to heal, you as the person who is trying to heal, you need to be able to recognize within yourself exactly what are the symptoms. The symptoms that are tied to the root of where all of this started. Because as you start to backtrack, that's how you're going to be able to start the process of healing and getting this handled and under control once and for all. The main goal that you're trying to reach is learn how to process your emotions so that you can self-regulate and not be dependent upon coping. Again, not that you would never use coping mechanisms, but that you're not dependent on them. And then also learn healthy ways of coping and just overall how to be able to process your emotions so that you can start living and be an active participant in your own life. Different resources that you can go to help you on this journey or just to start the process. You can look at videos, you can read books, you can talk to a therapist. And I know that the word therapy in a lot of communities, especially the Black community, is a big no-no, but you need somebody to help you. Going to a family member or friend can be helpful, and I'm never gonna knock that, but it is limited because they do not have the training to walk you through where you are now and where it started. Not everybody is out to con you. There are some bad doctors out there. There are bad therapists. There are bad people, point blank, period. You're gonna have folks who wanna rip you off, but that's in any and every profession. You're trying to get you help, okay? Because what you have been doing, which is more than likely nothing, or at least not the best healthy things to do, it has not been working, or it has only gotten you to a certain point. You need more help. And so just like if you went to a restaurant and you didn't like the food, don't be that person who's like, I'm never gonna eat Jamaican food ever again because I had one bad experience at a very specific restaurant. And heck, even if you've been to a few restaurants, maybe the city you live in just can't cook Jamaican food. Maybe y'all just got some bad restaurants. Maybe the state you live in is just not the best place to have that type of cuisine. Maybe you need to actually go to Jamaica. Maybe they just don't know how to cook. And maybe you actually just don't like Jamaican food. But if you write it off early by stereotyping everybody and putting everybody into one category just because you had one bad experience or several bad experiences, you're limiting yourself. So when it comes to a therapist, sometimes you have to try multiple, and it can be exhausting and it is annoying, and yes, it does cost money. But when you find the right person that does what you need them to do, they give you the homework to help you actually work through your issues, and y'all's personalities match, I'm telling you, it is so worth it. Because the years I have been in therapy, the good ones that I have had, I got a lot of work done, and I still have a lot more left to be done. Watch how you talk to others, y'all. Your kids, strangers, your partner, siblings, because you can't take your words back. Once you have put something out into the universe, you can't throw a rope around it and draw it back. What's done is done. What's said has been said. An analogy for this is I heard a story about a kid who just got angry, like bro would fly off the handle and get so angry about, I don't know, whatever pisses little kids off. And what his dad did to help him understand exactly how powerful and how dangerous his emotions could be anytime he would say something mean or negative in response to his anger. What he did was, I think I might have it a little bit wrong, but he had the kid, every time he got angry, he had his son like take a nail and like use the nail gun or just maybe a regular nail and like hammer into their wooden fence, right? And after whatever length of time, the dad had the kid go pull all the nails out. Once he pulled the nails out, then he had him actually stand back and look at the fence itself. The fence had a whole bunch of holes in it. The fence was riddled with holes. What this visual showed the kid is that, yes, you can apologize, and the apology is the equivalent of removing the nail. You can apologize to you in the face, but it will never remove the impact that your words had on that person. And this is why you have to be intentional and be careful with what you say and how you say it to somebody. And sometimes the lack of your words can be also just as dangerous. How I mentioned earlier, not telling your child, hey, I love you, you're important, you're smart, you're talented. It's not to give them a false sense of bravado, but it is to build their foundation and their self-esteem so they can become a healthy adult later in life. Yeah, the world we live in is bad, and I'm not expecting miracles here, but it doesn't have to stay this way. Hurt people because they've been hurt. So what if we were consciously and actively working towards not hurting other people, towards being kinder, more empathetic, accepting, and treating each other better? How much better could the world be in just a couple of generations? Most, if not all, people try to adopt that mindset.